Ladies and gentlemen, grab your coffee and settle in because Canada has officially entered full-blown constitutional chaos. Seriously, things are moving fast. The political scene is heating up before the maple syrups even had time to settle. Here's the deal. The Governor General, the Queen's representative, typically known for handing out awards and smiling in selfies, just shocked everyone by expressing support for Alberta and Saskatchewan's right to separate from Ottawa. Meanwhile, over in Liberal circles, Mark Carney is not taking the news well. The former central banker and longtime champion of technocratic solutions had what can only be described as a televised meltdown. The man who usually stays calm behind spreadsheets and economic jargon just couldn't contain his frustration as the Democratic wind started blowing in a direction he didn't like. All right, let's dig into this. How did we even end up here? Well, it all kicked off when Senator Mark Gold, Ottawa's go-to for dry, unelected advice, stood up in the Senate and basically said, no province can leave Canada unless Parliament says so. Straight-faced. Like that's just how it works. In Gold's version of Canada, Alberta and Saskatchewan are treated like misbehaving kids in a federal daycare. Want to leave? Sorry, not without a permission slip from Ottawa. Doesn't matter if you're paying for half the smacks and all the toys rules. Our rules, right? But then, just when it seemed like the political theater couldn't get any wilder, Senator Paula Simon stood up and asked the one question no one expected. And that's when the whole conversation flipped on its head. So here's the question that sparked it all. Does the Clarity Act apply to Alberta too? Seems straightforward, right? Well, not if you ask Senator Mark Gold. Instead of giving a direct answer, Gold launched into what can only be described as a verbal yoga session, twisting logic, law, and common sense into knots. He mumbled something about how it would be great question if this were a classroom, and then dodged it entirely. Honestly, you'd get more clarity from a fogged-up windshield in a February snowstorm. Meanwhile, back in Alberta, Premier Danielle Smith isn't waiting for Gold or Mark Carney to finish reading the Constitution in Latin. Alberta's new Citizen Initiative Act just dramatically lowered the bar for launching a provincial referendum, dropping the signature requirement from nearly impossible to just 90,000 names. That's fewer people than the number of frustrated Calgarians still waiting on a federal pipeline. And this time, they're not using soft language about autonomy or increased powers. The proposed referendum question is crystal clear. Do you agree that Alberta shall become a sovereign country and cease to be a province of Canada? That's not a policy suggestion. That's a breakup notice in bold Helvetica, no footnotes, no ambiguity. Enter Mark Carney, stage left, clutching the Clarity Act like it's a sacred document from the altar of bureaucracy. Normally calm and measured, Carney suddenly looked like a panicked teaching assistant who just realized the class stopped reading the textbook weeks ago. Instead of offering insight, he delivered a legalistic rant on national television, tossing around vague terms about unity and waving his arms like a broken GPS, desperately screaming, recalculating. While Carney was melting down, Pierre Poilievre was doing the one thing every leader should be doing, showing up. While the Laurentian elite hosted their think tanks and sipped wine over Alberta's identity crisis, Pierre was holding town halls, listening to Canadians who were struggling to buy groceries, talking with farmers, and sharing coffee poured by actual constituents, not staffers. He didn't quote law professors or host a symposium with the Davos crowd. He listened. He asked questions. He acted like a leader. And the West noticed because after decades of feeling like Canada's underappreciated, overtaxed, oil-rich cousin, Alberta and Saskatchewan aren't asking for permission anymore. They're demanding respect. Let's zoom out. The Clarity Act, passed in 2000, was designed to respond to Quebec's repeated attempts to break away. It says that any referendum must have a clear question and a clear majority. But here's the problem. Ottawa decides what's considered clear. That's like your landlord saying, "Sure, you can move out, if we like your reason and the way you asked." That's not democracy. That's a political power play dressed up in legalese. And through all of this, the figure no one expected to take a stand, but did, is none other than Governor General Mary Simon. While Mark Carney was busy losing his cool, trying to catch his breath and cling to talking points, Governor General Mary Simon quietly shifted the conversation. She didn't yell. She didn't rant. She simply acknowledged what few in Ottawa dared to say out loud. Maybe Alberta and Saskatchewan have a point. With that single moment, everything changed. Simon's recognition of the West's right to seek greater autonomy wasn't just symbolic, it was a seismic political statement. And Carney? He went into full meltdown mode. The man who once quoted central banking policy like gospel suddenly looked like he'd just been forced to binge-watch Pierre Poilievre town halls on repeat. The calm technocrat facade cracked wide open. Back in Ottawa, the liberal establishment is scrambling. Carney was supposed to be their ace, the steady hand, the intellectual heavyweight, the adult in the room. But the mask is slipping, and behind it, a man with all the charisma of a quarterly budget report. Canadians are waking up to the fact that a polished resume isn't the same as leadership. People don't want to be ruled by a walking PowerPoint presentation. They want someone who gets it, someone who's lived it, someone who doesn't mistake rural hardship for a policy case study. And that's where Pierre Poilievre comes in. While Carney speaks in bureaucratese, Poilievre speaks in real-world terms. He's out there in the community, asking questions, listening to concerns, and proposing solutions that actually reflect what Canadians are dealing with, especially in the West. It's no surprise he's surging in support, while Carney's media glow dims by the day, because this isn't just about Alberta anymore. It's about a growing resistance to a federal system that too often ignores the very provinces it depends on. It's about years of being taxed, regulated, and talked down to by people who've never shoveled snow at -40 or seen a diesel truck struggle to start at dawn. Ottawa's been tone deaf, and the West is done being polite about it. Danielle Smith understands this moment. She's not throwing Alberta into chaos, she's demanding a reckoning. A new deal, a renewed respect for provincial voice and autonomy. And now, with the Governor General indirectly backing Alberta's right to steer its own political path, the monopoly Ottawa's elite have had over the national conversation is starting to collapse. So what comes next? More referendums? A renegotiated confederation? Or maybe, just maybe, the long overdue realization that a nation can't survive when it only listens to itself through the lens of one city. Mark Carney may still be giving speeches in technocratic circles, clutching the Clarity Act and his Davos credentials like a shield. But out west, there's a different tone now. It's louder. It's growing. It's the sound of a country waking up, of people demanding real representation. That rumble you hear? It's not a train. It's not even Danielle Smith's next press conference. It's Pierre Poilievre walking toward a microphone with a plan, a promise, and a pulse on what Canadians actually want. And Carney? He can file his Clarity Act, his Build Back Better slogans, and his crumbling political future under one category, because the people are done waiting. The West is done apologizing. And Canada is finally ready for a leader who doesn't need subtitles to understand the prairies. This is Pierre Poilievre's moment. And what we just witnessed? That was the sound of Mark Carney realizing he's no longer in charge.